Today we are going to discuss about the topic joints. And in joints, we are going to see the definition and the genetic and geometric classification of the joints. Let's see. Joints are the fractures in the rock with geometric patterns. So, joints can be explained or can be defined in the layman term as these are the fractures in the rocks which are specifically are in geometric in nature. Say, for example, if you have a mural joint, that means those joints will definitely give rise to the cube or cubic partitions. So there is a fundamental difference between fracture and the joints. Usually rocks consist of fractures, but when these fractures took the symmetric geometric patterns, in that case you can call them as the joints. These joints can be of primary or of secondary origin. So what primary and secondary origin is? The joints which are formed at the time of the formation of that rock, then it will be called as the primary joint. Means during the formation or during the consolidation, say, or during the crystallization of that rock, if the joints develops, in that case, those will be called as primary joints. But say, for example, if the rock is crystallized or deposited or formed, and after a considerable span of time, joints are developed, in that case, those joints will be called as secondary joints because they are of secondary origin. They are not origined they are not origined during the origin of that rock. They have been developed. They had been developed later the origin of the rock. Hence, primarily we can distinguish them as primary joint and secondary joint. So we must understand that joints are the fractures in the rocks with geometric patterns. So every joint will definitely gives rise to a geometric pattern. Okay, it could be a sheet pattern, it could be columnar pattern, it could be mural pattern, and so on and so on. We have already seen these joint patterns, or we have already studied some joints in our igneous petrology. Okay, when we have studied the different structures in the igneous rocks, where we have studied columnar structure. Okay, where the columnar joints are there, mural joints are there, were there. We have also studied them. Let us see the next slide. Classification. The joints can be classified on the basis of genetic as well as geometric. So what genetic means? Genetic means they are responsible because not because of the they are classified not because of the geometry, but because of the process responsible for its formation. Say for example, if you have a joint which is developed because of some kind of process, in that case that will be termed as a genetic classification, genetic joint. But if the joint is developed or the joint is classified on the basis of its relationship with the bed, then it can be termed as a geometric joint. So genetic is defined on the basis of the process of formation responsible, whereas the geometric is classified on the basis of its relationship with the subsequent beds or the consequent beds. Let us see the first genetic joints. In genetic joints, we have tension, shear, and compression. In tension joint, you can see the tensional force is responsible for the formation of such joints. Whenever you pull, whenever due to any tectonic activity, when the rock is pulled apart, of course, it's obvious that the joints will develop perpendicular to the force of pliance. In that case, such joints will be referred as the tensional joint. You can see in the first picture that how the tension joints are developed because of the tension experienced by the rock. The second is compression joint. Whenever you compress the rock, as a result, few joints are developed, and those joints are called as comprehensional joints. So the tensional joints are quite different from appearance with respect to the comprehensional joint. And comprehensional joint are developed because of the comprehensional force. So the tensional force results into tensional joint, whereas comprehensional force results into comprehensional joint. So the process responsible is selected for its classification. Tensional force is there, that's why those are called as tensional joints. Comprehensional force is there, hence it is called as a comprehensional joints. Now we'll see the shear joints where, due to the shearing effect, the joints are developed. See, there are two blocks. Okay, those two blocks moved, they displaced apart from each other, and because of this, the shearing effect is there. This shearing effect gives rise to the shear joints. So this shearing results into the joints pattern, joint sets, which are termed as shear joints. As usual, the shear joints are named after the shearing effect developed due to the sliding of the blocks. Hence, these all three joints can be classified under genetic classification. Let us see the geometric joint. As I said, that geometric joints are classified on the basis of their relationship with the bed present in the periphery. You can see here there are three specific joints, that is deep joint, strike joint, and oblique joint. Let us see what the strike joint is. We have studied the strike of the bed. The strike of the bed is the line of intersection of bed with respect to the horizontal surface. If your joint is parallel to the strike line, then that joint can be called as a strike joint. So because it is parallel to the strike of the bed. If the joint is perpendicular to the strike or parallel to the deep direction, in that case, that joint will be referred as the deep joint. An oblique joint means neither towards strike nor towards the joint. It is aligned to somewhat another direction. In that case, that joint will be called as an oblique joint. So, strike joint, deep joint, and oblique joint are classified under the head of geometric classification, whereas these are classified on the basis of the peripheral bed or relationship with the peripheral bed. If the joint is parallel to the strike of the bed, then it is called as strike joint. If the strike is if the joint is parallel to the tip of the bed, in that case it will be called as a deep joint. And if it is neither parallel to strike nor to joint deep, but it is oblique, then it can be called as an oblique joint. Some miscellaneous types of joints are also there, like open joint, closed joint, smooth joint, rough joint, small joint, master joint. So you can see the open joint. What open joint is? JT1, where it is open, it is quite wide at its mouth. Hence it is called as an open joint because it is quite wide, and water or air can go inside or go between these two blocks very easily. Hence it is called as open joint. But on the other half, you can see that in JT2, it's a closed joint. You will not find any kind of opening in that. In that case, those are called as closed joint. In JT3 is a smooth joint. Why it is smooth? Because you can see the exact straight line along that joint. So it is a smooth joint. In JT4, you can see it is a rough joint. Why it is rough? Because the separation line is not smooth. It is slightly undulating or zigzag. Hence it is called as a rough joint. JT5 is called as small joints. Why they are called as small joints? Because they are quite reserved for a certain area. They are not elongated throughout the beds. Whereas JT6 is a master joint. Why it is called as master joint? Because it can surpass the bed boundaries and it can continue themselves throughout the succession or throughout the beds. Hence, those are called as master joints. So this was the miscellaneous classification of the joints. Let us see some well-known examples of joints in the field. The first picture shows the sheet joint. The second picture shows the columnar joint. And the third picture shows the mural joints. In sheet joints, you can see the development of the sheets over there. In the columnar joint, you can see the small columns. Okay, usually basalt shows such kind of joints, and where the granite shows such kind of mural joints where the cubical blocks are separated. They may not be exact cube, but they are, they are quite nearer to the cube, and hence they are called as mural joints. So let us revise our topic. Today's topic was on joints. There we have seen that what the joints are. These are the fractures in the rocks with a geometric pattern. This is a very layman definition so that you can understand and distinguish between the fractures and the joints. Joints can be primary or secondary. If they are formed during the formation of the rock, then they are primary. If they formed after the formation of the host rock, then it is a secondary. Classification, it can be classified into genetic and geometric. In genetic, you can see the tension. You can see the tensional, shear, and comprehensional joints, where the tensional force, comprehensional force, and shear force are responsible, respectively. Then we can see the geometric classification, where we have seen the strike joint, deep joints, and oblique joint. Geometric classifications are done with respect to the relationship with respect to the bed. So if it is parallel to the bed, it is called a strike joint. If the fracture is parallel to the deep joint, and if it is neither parallel to strike and deep, then it can be termed as an oblique joint. Then we have also seen some miscellaneous joints like open, closed, smooth, rough, small, master. And finally, we have seen the well-known examples and quite depictive examples of the joint in the field. So this was all about the joint. Thank you for your patience listening.